with an introduction like that, is downhill now, all the way. Thanks, Peter. What happens in oral poetry is you carry your collection in your head because that's where you make it and that's where you leave it there. So the problem becomes what you recite on when you're asked to read in front of a group of people. And one way one does is that the conversation that precede the reading, you pick up clues from there and say, okay, that could be a poem here, that could be a poem there. So first is going to be a tree reading series, so I thought of my tree poem, which begins by saying that when trees recollect leaves as afterthoughts. That's how it begins, the first couplet. When trees recollect leaves as afterthoughts. But instead of reading the poem, I'll pick on some conversation we had while having supper. One thing that came up during the supper was the fact of choreography and dance. And I immediately said, oh yeah, I got a poem which has got choreography in that. That'll make a nice beginning. And then I met a friend, architect friend, after years. So I said, okay, great. So this poem is called Daedalus, who you know is the father of Icarus. Icarus is the romantic hero who flapped wings and flew too high. Anybody can press the accelerator. And the guy went too fast and he died. Big deal. The guy who made those wings was an architect, his father. Okay? So Daedalus this poem is Daedalus. Plinth the house, doors and windows the walls you raise, roof the space, set the stage. Arch the proscenium, suspend columns on crossing grids, choreograph the steps you take to spiral and ascend. Through smoke bomb clouds and lantern sun that revolves around the center stage, you orbit the stairway shaft. Light on your face, you have stayed the sun, skydive into a no man's sky, while catwalk pulleys in tandem revolve to unravel strands for your touchdown to an applause rips across the wax wings of your free-falling, fallen sun. That's Daedalus. Other one, there's a scientist who came up and said he writes poems on science. I thought of this poem, it's called Planck's Constant. So we studied the Planck's constant way back in university days. It was 6.6 into 10 raised to minus 27. Oh no, 6.6 into 1 upon 10 raised to minus 27. Okay, that's Planck's constant. What they didn't teach us was this fantastic, this delicious fact that that is the minimum radius you can push an electron, after which the speed goes up that it just flies out. Okay, so this is a poem. It's called Planck's constant. H. That's what the Planck's constant is, H. H equals if I forget a poem, it's not worth it. I'll come back. Yeah. H equals 27th part of 6 H equals 10 raised to minus 27th part of 6.6ness. So you can't push an electron into orbits lesser, though you can find man within continuous electron freedom. Now, but let's come to now the poem I want to begin with, which was a tree. Oh yeah, one more thing. In Blaine's poem, there was fiber optics. That word occurred. And immediately, this poem came back into my head, which has, wonderfully, it has the word fiber optics in that. It has food in that. Okay, so we have supper, we have food, and it has animals in that, because that's the book we're going to head towards, the alphabetary. So this book, this poem is called The Traveling Non-Vegetarian. The man who spoke with suitcases said wisdom is hydrogen peroxide. Wore a white wig of fiber optic cables and dentures that were pure African ivory. When he smiled, elephants burst into tears. The man who spoke with suitcases said homing pigeons made edible pages, and gray parrots that spoke too many languages tasted no better than those that were dumb, and all birds on TV were cyber tandooris. The man who spoke with suitcases said the onion was the final package that packed the process of packing itself, which explained the missing mass of the universe, and tears onion peelers and stargazers shed. The man who spoke with suitcases said the banana skin was a continuum of zippers, and all coconuts were neo-colonials that were smashed on occasions of celebrations, all brown outside, all white within. The man who spoke with suitcases said neckties were nooses, and wristwatches, handcuffs. And honest heroes that wore underpants outsides were neurotics in the designer masks that they removed only to eat. The man who spoke with suitcases said brinjals were boiled with equine eyeballs, applied gold glitter dust to his horse's eyebrows, and powder-coated all his toe and foot nails, had candlelit dinners in fireproof stables. The man who spoke with suitcases said hunchbacks were born-again backpackers, and slim briefcases made of alligator skin had chromium-plated mouth to smack off space to declare at the last border crossing. The traveling non-vegetarian. Okay, this is and on the subject of food, this is the mother of all food poems, okay? This is, I'm going to send this poem to Anthony Hopkins. I think he'll like it. It's called Cannibal. Consumer of consumers, a meta diner whose dining begins once the dinner is done. Good guests dine with me, and then I dine on them. Their last supper is a mere appetizer to the main course that they always miss. My recipes are in epitaphs, menu in several tongues. In each translation, the dessert is you. Apple of my eye, cherry peach, honey pie. You look as always good enough to eat. I am the perfect embodiment of the company I forever keep. Many have dined with me, but at the end, I dine alone. Cannibal, okay. But let's go back to tree. Okay, this is the tree poem. It goes like this. When trees recollect leaves as afterthoughts, xylem and phloem are subliminal streams, roots are a blind faith branching in the kingdom of perpetual darkness. They dream of colors that the dew clinging to the tip of the leaf disperses light into. At the end of all digressions, what can branching achieve but leaves? Nomads that set off long ago to settle in a different season. Wind blows so that leaves may speak of the ages of silence when vowels were made of sunlight and raindrops were consonants. Companions, we exchange breaths but remain expelled from your domain. Alchemy of light and liquid, the stuff green dreams are made of. What can the vernal bark teach us when it too will peel away? For all that we learn from leaves, the roots strive to erase. The trees are a flutter of flags. Denude them and they will refoliate. The green will not fade, change only into a red that blood surges to recall. Horizon is the axis that divides and rules over two systems of branching. Who can tell which side is which? Even leaves do not linger to give us a clue. What chances do seeds have now? Trees are aliens. Trees are aliens, denuded for once having harbored leaves, guilty of yearning to harbor them once again, when trees recollect leaves as afterthoughts. This poem is from a series on colors, and this poem is called Green. And I tend to write in series, okay? It just so happened that this became, Alphabetry is a slim cross-section of a mother of all my series, about 86 animal poems, like a virtual zoo up there. But I have color series, and now the flower series have begun because my daughter was born, and her name, my son named her Zahra, which means flower in one pronunciation, and other pronunciation is person of distinction. So the flower poems start going on. Anyway, in the color series, I remember the blue poem. It's, you know, there's a classical form called sestina, and those 6 lines, and then you keep having 6 of those, so 36 lines, and then you end up with 3 lines, so 39 lines. And then all the 6 lines, A, B, C, D, E, you keep rotating the verse endings, and so this poem is not a sestina. It's called Blue. Sestina has blue eyes. She moves in 6-fold ways and says, "This is not a sestina." Sestina has blue eyes. She moves in 6-fold ways and says, "This is not a sestina." It rains when she lowers her gaze. Cobblestones bask in the luster of her neons. Sidewalks shimmer with borrowed light. Nothing remains out of sight. All you sought to conceal 6 times behind 6 veils, she says. In the text that the textile interweaves, I think I detect a sestina. The sky belongs to our eyes, where rainbows arch in all hues of blue, but sestina belongs to her body. She says, 6 blue flames hold their breath, only to defer the final sestina. When sestina raises her eyes, the sun cascades down her hair. Sapphires shimmer in the sky. When Sestina closes her eyes, the world's sand sky sheds as many tears as words that make up Sestina. Sestina's eyes are dizzy blue. She says, you have exceeded the 6-fold ways. She says, this is not a Sestina. Now this one is a villanelle. Okay. In a villanelle, you have the first line and the third line, they keep repeating, and you throw in all the rhymes together. It's a god-awful form to work with, okay? But this villanelle is called Killing and the Art of Calligraphy. To put the record straight, I was first a poet, and then I became a calligrapher, and then I became an architect, okay? That's how it goes. So this is called Killing and the Art of Calligraphy. He leaves his signature on the skin. Glint of the moon on stainless reed with inkless stylus draws out ink. You know this one which is called Glint of the moon on stainless reed. Poems tend to have connections. So I know this poem is connected to another poem called The Forest. Because in the forest is a glint of the moon. Okay? And that forest poem goes like this. It says, forest, sorry, we'll come back to this villanelle, okay? Forest eyes you in the dark, measures every move you dare, stalks your trail of uncertain steps, vanishes when lightning falls, reappears the instant after. 1,000 eyes of the beast converge at the nape of your neck, softens the glint of the moon's last light. Just as you slowly turn your head, you never did sweat in the rain before, that beats out the rhythm of a terrible heart, that quivers with each breath you take, each time the vein in your neck pulsates, each time you hesitate. So there's the glint of the moon on the nape of your neck. So here's come back in this poem, the villanelle. He leaves his signature on the skin, glint of the moon on stainless reed with inkless stylus draws out ink. And these 2 lines, he leaves the signature on the skin and glint, with inkless stylus draws out ink. That'll keep repeating, okay? So we start the poem. He leaves his signature on the skin, glint of the moon on stainless reed with inkless stylus draws out ink. He can stare for hours and not blink at bodyscapes to get a lead. He leaves his signature on. The skin, tabula rasa for his skin, compelling inscriptions he pleads with inkless stylus. Draws out ink, he sees the red run in the sink, water is a part of the creed he leaves. His signature on the skin, snake devouring his tail in a spin, ending is the beginning seed with inkless stylus. Draws out ink trapped in a loop mode, he dare not think of life and art and death and deed. He leaves the signature on the skin with inkless stylus, draws out ink. It is this poem which became the foundation of my friendship with my co-author of this book called The Alphabetry. Because I came to Canada in 1999, and in the beginning of that year I was surfing around to find out who are the poets and architects in Canada. And I came across these poems and I liked them, and I gave my critique to this person called Bruce Meyer, whom I didn't know. I just saw his poems and I liked them. Because they were based on a formalist movement, and I had finished my formalist phase. This villanelle and some sonnets, they go back to my early 80s, till mid-80s. While North America began its formalist movement after mid-80s. So here I'm in the 90s looking at his poem and saying, oh yeah, I'll send you some. So I first critiqued his ones, and his reply came to me saying one word, like, who are you? So how do you say who you are? So I just sent him this villanelle. And that began a friendship, which then grew on for 10 years, and 10 years later, kind of this conversation developed into this book, and the book is published, which is called Alphabetry, which got my animals from A to Z. So on every page you have A for ant, and then here is essay on the ant, and then B for bull, and his essay on the bull. It just goes on like that. He's the author of 31 books. Well, I average, my publishing average is 1 book in 5 decades. Okay? So let's start with the alphabet tree animals. But before that, just to restore one balance, is when I was reading at the International Festival of Authors along with Bruce. Along with us was David Gilmour, the other author. And Dave, he said before his reading that he was at the International Film Festival and he much prefers to be in the International Festival of Authors. He says because the crowd is so civilized here, there are no bugs, there are no kittens here. And I said, okay, then to restore that absence of bugs, we must have a cockroach. So I came on stage and said, and therefore, let's start with the cockroach. Okay, so I'll start with the cockroach now. This is the cockroach. Somewhere in the world, other part of the world, I'm sleeping at 4 o'clock in the morning, I get up, there's something creeping up there, and I jerk my hands and put on the lights, and there's the big guy there, and I take a newspaper, roll it, and I'm going to whack it. I'm going to whack it, and I hesitate because he didn't run. And I remember pausing, I just remember that, okay? That I remember pausing mid-flight, he didn't move. I whacked him, obviously. But then I can't sleep. I mean, my job is to, whack you, your job is to run. Why didn't you run, right? It didn't make sense. So here's this cockroach poem that came out of that. Okay, it goes like this. And we know the fact that cockroaches will outlast us, and they'll outlast a nuclear winter. I mean, this kind of creatures there. Okay. I wait on the hard edge of his bed, watching the blur of the newspaper rolled into a taut cylinder arcing towards me. Species are forever. I shall not flee. Survival after time is tiresome. Individuals must once in a while learn to let go. The cylinder is approaching at an unnecessary speed, driven less by the need of the moment and more by his fear of machines. I am supremely articulated. My structure is my ornament. He's a blob with a brain and 4 limbs, one of which is swinging in. Close up, and the grayness of cylinder separates into patterns black and white. Zooming in, black planets flee wide space, and then I'm touched by the cylinder. Like a knight I shall arise, the new age of bronze. Oh, the sweetness of surrender that ignores the crushing weight of a mind once set. My sides burst symmetrically. Is there life after death? Is there death after life after death? Is there life after death after life after death? Turn to the back page of yesterday's newspaper. I'm a Rorschach smeared in relief. Read me. That's cockroach. This is the edited version of cockroach. I made a shot, okay? I took out the middle version. Yes, it's too long. So the animal poems, and we'll just have about 5 or 6 of them, and call today. The first one is the ant. There are 3 fascinating facts about the ant, and they're really fascinating. One is if you pick up an encyclopedia on mathematics, you'll find out that the first counting machines or counting whatever that occurs is 150 million BC, and that's the ant. The ant evolved from the wasp in the year 150 million BC, and ants count their steps. Is the first pedometer in existence. That's how they can find their home back again. Take a desert ant. Think of a desert, and an ant's hole where it comes out from is barely a few millimeters. Okay, in a desert. He comes out from that, that's his home, and now he goes around looking for some food, finds it. He knows directions by the sunlight, but he's counted his steps. He estimates the number of steps and then starts walking, counting those steps. And precisely there it reaches that hole, it goes back in again. How do scientists know that? They began to make stilts, and when the ant reaches the food, they take that ant and they attach stilts to the legs. So now the strides are bigger. The ant always goes way beyond his thing. Or as scientists, they cut the legs, and then the ants, they never reach the spot again. They're very precise counters, they just count. So that's the first pedometer. That's one fact. Second fact is the ants outweigh us in sheer weight. There's so many ants in the world that if you add up all the ants and weigh them, they weigh more than the human species at any given moment. They're just so small, they're decentralized. That's the power of decentralization. You never see them. but there are that much of them, okay? The third fact, which is again fascinating, is their architecture of the anthill. The anthill that you see in any picture is only the tip of the iceberg. Scientists began to fill them up with a slurry of concrete poured into these holes, and they kept pouring them. It took them not a few hours, it took them 5 days to fill up that particular anthill. When they then dug out the mud, it was 20 feet deep, 10 feet in diameter. It was as intricate as your heart and your blood vessels. It was so precise that the garbage disposal was the periphery so the pathogens don't infect the mother ant. There were ventilation chutes right up to the surface. It's a piece of architecture. The ant does not know it is making that. And what's fascinating is, when we think our brain has got these neurons, the brain cells, all that the brain cells are doing is, if there's enough energy gathering in them, they will then throw that lightning spark to the next neuron. If there's not enough of that, they won't do that. Thought occurs. They don't know they're thinking. Ants don't know they're making the anthills. Our brain cells don't know they're thinking, and thought occurs and the anthill occurs. Okay? So, this is the anthill poem. I mean, these facts are better than the poem, but anyway, the poem has to be there. It's a poetry reading. I do, therefore, unmindfully I am. Okay? I do, therefore, unmindfully I am, a passing thought embodied. A neuron on 6 neurotic feet crossing synapses in a frenzy saying, read me, for I cannot read. The sum total of all that I do is the thought that escapes me while I relentlessly fabricate mind mindlessly. B, bull, C, cat. A cat is, we all know cats. This is a cat poem. The cat's lining of his eye is called tapetum lucidum. There's one time when the scientists got nomenclature correct. I mean, it's beautiful. It's normally very ugly Latin terms for any scientific terminology, but this is so beautiful. They call the lining of the eye of the cat tapetum lucidum. This must be like a wannabe poet who became a scientist, maybe, as if they're two different things. They're not. So here's the cat poem. In the dreadful gleam of cat's eyes, the world at night is alight with neon signs of life. Goldfish are glowing lanterns underwater. Angelfish are slivers of moonbeams trapped in cat's eyes. Water's tense skin is animated translight. Fluorescent rats and mice are holographic knots with tails that twitch or laser beams as they dart across the gulf between cat's eyes. Cats can hear what bats cannot see as they hang from the tree, heartbeats of their upside-down hearts, infrared stars in the cat's night sky. All that glows in the dark, water, earth, and sky are dying embers for the cat that divides the night world into categories of light and darkness defined by the coordinates of other cat's eyes. Cats dream with their eyes wide open, pupils dilate to overtake the night. D, dragonfly, which is not in the book, but is there in the website. All right. My head is a conference of eyes. I hold too many points of views. My feet are displaced hair. Tentativeness was never so tenacious. My body is a fragile stem, understatement at an angle. My wings are nostalgic leaves. Transparency cannot photosynthesize. My tongue is on fire. I have a name to live up to. The dragonfly. Elephant. I had this conversation with Arthur Erickson on the stage of National Gallery some years ago. And this was his last visit to Ottawa. So here you have this doyen of Canadian architecture sitting there, and I'm interviewing him. And there was this bizarre moment when I just had to ask him, because he began to tell me about his I asked him what his earliest influences were growing up in Vancouver. And he said that he had a grandmother who used to take him out on nature trails. And she told him that if she had a chance to be reborn, reincarnated, she'd like to be reborn as a native because she said that they have a better understanding of landscape than we do. What she meant was Erickson family, whatever it is, white Canadians. So I just had to ask Erickson this question. Okay, I said, what would you like to be reborn as? So he didn't, so he says, you know, beg pardon, kind of. I said, like, if you had a chance to come back again, what would you like to be reborn as? So he thought, he said, like an elephant, because they have their way. So I said, fine. I said, then you must hear this elephant. And then I recited this elephant poem to him. It goes like this. Inarticulate blob of ink. You know, forms have a direct relationship to gravity. So the bigger you are, is the relationship between the surface area and the volume. So the bigger you get, the more blobby you get. So the biggest thing ever in this world was the blue whale. It was bigger than all dinosaurs, okay, still there. It's just a big water balloon, right? Then you get smaller, you get elephant, which is like, okay, not very, then you have human beings, we got fingers and, you know, more shapely. You go lower than, smaller than us, the cockroach, or you go, the microbes, they're so articulated, it's frightening. They're all over the place, right? So it frightens us, that degree of articulation is a direct relationship to gravity there. Anyway, Galileo talks about that in two dialogues. He compares the bone of the elephant and the bone of the human being, how different they're in proportions because of the weight relationship. So anyway, the elephant poem. Inarticulate, and elephants don't forget. So the theory, my personal theory, my only scientific theory is that if the rest of you are descended from the first cousin of apes, we oral poets descend from elephants. This is how it goes. Inarticulate blob of ink, nose and tail out of scale, ears that would be wings. White dust precede the body's darkness, scanning eyes record the world. Mind does not override, does not erase, celebrates an excess of memory with the memory of excess. No bigness is big enough when you have forgotten how to forget. G for grasshopper, and then H for horse, and then J for jellyfish. So 3 more poems, okay? Okay, grasshopper. Nose and tail are synonyms. Restless antennas scan the sky as smell to taste and taste to smell. Jaws are antonyms. Front chops up and down, rear grinds from side to side. Ears are stomach bound. The sound that I make in my feet is no food for thought. Map your senses onto my frame of reference. Your thighs will bulge with muscular insights. You will see the way the world I do. Take a leap of faith, fly. Horse. One way of understanding what engineers do and what architects do when we talk of designing civil structures, one way of understanding that is when an engineer looks at a column, he sees gravity descending. When an architect looks at the column, he sees grace ascending. So these two words come in this poem, gravity and grace. The horse. My body is all gravity. My ankles all grace. My skin is a seismograph. Shockwaves, ripples beneath the sheen. Earth tremors that connect. Shiva's shoulders and Parvati's shanks. The rest of me copes with my androgyny. My movement is meditation, canter mere foreplay. For when I break into a gallop, the circle of horizon begins to slip away as I touch down to beat the world with my feet so that it may spin. My eyes are twin holes, eyelashes, scorched rays of light that could not flee. With each flick of my nostrils, stars flicker away. With each turn of my head, swirl of my mane, spiraling of galaxies, I watch the universe change. Finally, jellyfish. And jellyfish is about forgetting. Because I forget everything except my poetry. So I stop carrying things. And now I don't carry anything, not even a cell phone, okay? So it's as simple as that. Because if I carry something, I'll forget it. Something you have to carry is umbrella. So I decided to buy the biggest umbrella I could from Toronto Union Station. They got one shop that only sells umbrellas for some reason, mainly. So from this shop I bought this, the biggest umbrella they had was oversized for me, which had a large wooden handle, very well crafted, but completely oversized. So that I'll not forget it, right? And I come to Ottawa, and it's not raining any day. And then it's going to rain. So I take the umbrella with me and I go to National Gallery of Canada. And when it closes, I leave it and I'm walking towards my car. And I'm walking, it's raining, I'm getting wet because I forgot the umbrella at the National Gallery of Canada, which is now closed. A few days before that, I'd seen this wonderful video of a jellyfish, the one that's completely transparent. And for the life of me, I don't know how you get a form that is so not there. You only see the reflection of light, okay? So here I'm getting drenched, and everything comes together, and I feel like an idiot, basically. And this poem, I started working. Yeah, and as an oral poet, what you do is when the moment comes, you start working on it. You work as hard as any other poet, but you work in your head, that's all. And it's easier there, because you can flip it, you can do things to it, and it's very fluid, right? And by the time I reach a car, it's getting formulated, and by the time you drive home, you forget that you're wet, because you got a poem here, okay? This is the way it goes. I dream of form. No, you dream of form, I appear in water. That's how it begins. Yeah. You dream of form, I appear in water. You dream of time, I begin to pulsate. You dream of life, I made of water, move in water. Somewhere on land, there's a missing umbrella. Somewhere on land, you're drenched to your skin. Somewhere on land, you've given up searching, you're taken to dreaming. Well, somewhere on land, your missing umbrella is waiting for someone, somewhere on land to open its wings. While somewhere in the ocean, a portion of water is refracting light in unseen ways. Thank you.